All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are y'all doing? You ready to do some more math? All right, let me just check the level of battery on my headset. I'm over 0.5%, so that's good. I guess over 50%. And put my phone in. All right. So today or tonight, we are going to go over chapter 4 and only chapter 4. Okay. We're not going to try to cram in 2 chapters worth, but chapter 4 has a lot of stuff in it. So we're going to start by our normal traditional taking notes with the lecture, and then from there we're going to do kind of an in-class activity that will help you prepare for your homework assignments that are going to be associated with chapter 4. Okay. Now, I realized as I was just looking at all the due dates and everything, your due dates for your chapter 4 assignments are like 2 weeks away. And so I realized that we're kind of are a little bit ahead of schedule. We're like a week ahead of schedule. Maybe I was only supposed to do 1 chapter last week and not try to do 2. So as a result, we're 1 week ahead of our schedule on our calendar, but that's okay. We'll just go ahead and go with it. So let's jump into chapter 4. This is one of my favorite chapters because I like puzzles. I like seeing how things fit together in the restaurants or in any kind of situation. And we're going to talk about the menu and how the menu, how we can analyze it to be able to determine what's working for our menu and what's not working for our menu. And it's all kind of centered around the concept of preserving looking at our costs. Okay. Now, we have some areas that are affecting how much we sell our items for. Okay. And the 4 areas that are external, meaning they are outside of our restaurant, which means we have no control over them. One of them is the market-driven pricing. Okay. The market-driven pricing, when you hear the word market, okay, in any kind of business setting, whenever you hear the word market, we're talking about an area. So we might say like the Riverwalk Market, which is like the area of all the restaurants that are on the Riverwalk. We also have a downtown market. Okay. We might have like a San Antonio market. So when we look at that, we can look to see what basically our competitors are charging. Okay. If we are higher than our competitors and the product is not superior to our competitors, if it's pretty similar as far as the product, then our guest may choose to go to our competitor because it's a cheaper price, right? Our customers have to have a price-value relationship, okay? Meaning the price that they're paying, does it match the value that they feel that they are getting? How many of you have ever been to a restaurant where you leave and you feel like, wow, I paid way too much for very little? Anybody ever have that experience before? Okay. What are some examples of things that add value to a situation, a dining situation when you go out to eat? Yes.
Like breadsticks and bread baskets.
Okay, so if they bring something complimentary for the table, like bread, rolls, chips and salsa, tortillas, whatever, right? They bring that adds value, right? I remember the first time I went somewhere up north and to a Mexican restaurant, and they had to pay for chips and salsa, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like in San Antonio, chips and salsas are free. It's not free because it's built into the cost of everything, or it should be, right? But that value, I feel like I'm getting something for nothing, right? I'm getting that complimentary item. Good. What else can add value to a dining situation? Ashley. Customer service. Absolutely. Destiny, is that what you're going to say? Yeah. So the level of service. So you may have the exact same menu item and the exact same quality of food, but if the service is a little bit better, then that may attract people and they're willing to pay a higher price because they know they're going to get a better value. They're going to get a better service experience. Okay. So price value relationship, if our guests don't value it for the price that we are charging, they're not going to buy it. Plain and simple. Okay. So we've talked about market driven pricing, price value, the markup differentiation we're going to talk about here in just a second. This is basically how we mark up the cost to get to our selling price. Okay. And each category is a little bit different. Each category of the menu is slightly different. The last one is demand driven pricing. Okay. Anybody know what an example of demand driven pricing is? Okay, so how much it's wanted. Good. Like the demand in something. Okay. But really, when we think about demand driven pricing, go ahead.
Chicken wings, like 2 years back, where Wingstop started selling thighs because the chicken wings were so expensive, so hard to get.
Okay, so that could also be the market driven pricing. The idea of like if a key ingredient is not available, or if the price goes up so high, they may choose a substitute item. I didn't realize that that Wingstop went to chicken thighs for a little bit. That's interesting. Okay. Yes. Exactly. That demand driven pricing is if I want to eat that Pizza Hut single serve, like, personal pizza while I'm watching the Spurs play, then I have to go eat it there, right? I can't go call Pizza Hut to have them deliver something to the Frost Bank Center. I have to eat it there, right? Same thing at the airport. So stadiums, airports, places where the demand, people want it. So I might increase the pricing just a little bit. Okay. You also have to think about situations like that where some people might think, oh, you're just jacking up the price because it is it's in this one location, right? But you also have to think about, in addition to the cost of the ingredients, oftentimes they have to pay kind of like a rental for that space. So, which may even be higher than if they had their own standalone restaurant. And so they're basically renting that space from that stadium or from the airport. And if their rental is super high, well, yeah, they've got to raise their prices to help cover the cost of those that rental. Okay. So demand-driven pricing is where people are kind of stuck in an area and you can kind of charge a little bit more of a premium price. Is the AT&T or Frost Bank Center, does this still have a Whataburger in it? It still does? Okay. So for the longest time, I think up until 2 p.m., you could go to Whataburger at the Frost Bank Center and it'd be normal menu prices. And then as soon as 2 p.m., they would shut down, close for the day, and then when the event started, it would be event pricing. So they had that available as kind of like a local, you could go and check it, eat the normal menu prices, even when it wasn't open. So that was, I think, was a good idea for them. I don't know if they've started doing that after the pandemic, but not yet. But it was always a good idea because otherwise it just sits empty. It's not like a standalone restaurant where it's open during the day. Well, that was a really good idea on their part. Okay, so now we're going to talk about 4 different ways that we price out our menus. The first one is our factor method. Okay, so this is number 2, letter A, factor method. Okay, our factor method, basically this is something that you can utilize when you have you don't want to do the triangle. Okay, that's the food cost percentage method. You don't want to use the triangle, and you can simply just multiply your costs, right? This factor method works really well when your factor is kind of like a whole number. Okay, kind of like you see here, 5, 4, 2.5. Oftentimes you'll hear chefs in the industry just tell people take your cost and triple it. Just times it by 3. Okay. And what they're saying there is they're essentially looking for a 33% food cost, right? Because 33% is 1/3. So if they just say triple it, they're essentially just looking for a 33% food cost. So that 3 is the factor. So if we look on our notes page, let's see, I think we'll jump to number 5 for the factor method. Is that correct? Let me grab a blank page so I can follow along. Nope, sorry, number 4. Number 4, the factor method. We need to divide 100 by the percentage. Whatever our desired percentage is, we want to divide 100. Then we want to multiply the cost by that factor. Okay, by that factor. So let's do the first one. What is our, actually, let's do the example on your page first. The example on your page for number 4. We have a $2.50 food cost, and we're shooting for a target percentage of 20%. So what is 100 divided by 20? 5. Okay. You can actually look too, see right here where I circled up on the right here, 20 is a factor of 5. Okay. So if I take $2.50 and multiply by 5, what do I get? There we go, $12.50. So this tells me if it costs me $2.50 and I want to aim for a 20% food cost, just multiply by 5 and that should sell it for $12.50. If we were to do the triangle, it would do the same thing, right? But if we did the triangle, we'd have to do 250 divided by 0.2, right? Which one is easier? 250 times 5 or 250 divided by 0.2? Times 5, right? We can do that in our head, or we can easily just kind of think about it, right? So this factor method, like I said, is really helpful when your factor is a whole number or something that's easily multiplied, okay? So let's look at these other examples that are up here. What is 100 divided by 25? 4. So I'm going to multiply by 4. What is 250 times 4? $10. Okay. What is 30% divided by 100, or sorry, 100 divided by 30? 3.33, right? So we multiply 3.33 and we get $9.99. Okay. 40 divided by, sorry, 100 divided by 40, 2.5. So we multiply, you can use a calculator on this one. I'll have to do that one in your head. It's like 38 something, 39, 38.13. Okay. And then what's 100 divided by 10? 10, right? So 15 cents times 10 is $1.50. Okay. So you can see how it's much easier to do this factor method than it is try to do the triangle every single time, okay? Number 2, letter B, is the food cost percentage method, okay? 2B is the food cost percentage method. I feel like there is a question for that one. Oh yeah, number 3. To calculate the food cost percentage method, we will use the what? The triangle tool. So number 3, we're not going to do examples of the food cost percentage because why? We've already done a whole bunch of them. So number 3, just a reminder that if they ask the food cost percentage method, that's going to use the triangle. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about this? Factor or food cost percentage? Yes, the triangle is the answer to number 3. All right, the third method is called the contribution margin method. So 2, letter C, is contribution margin method. What is the root word of contribution? What was it? Contribute. Good. Okay. So contribute is the root word of contribution. So that tells us that this contribution margin contributes to cover our profit and our non-food costs. Okay. So our contribution margin will, all the money from that contribution margin is going to cover our non-food costs and our profit. Okay. So to calculate the contribution margin method number 5, we need to add the non-food costs and profit. So number 5, letter A, add the non-food cost and the profit. And then letter B is what? Divide by the number of guests. Okay. From there, we're going to go ahead and add the contribution margin to the recipe cost. Okay. So if our non-food costs is 5,000 and our profit is 3,000, let's go work it through step by step. Letter A. What does letter A say? We're going to add the non-food and the profit. So non-food and profit added together in letter A, 5,000 plus 3,000 is what? 8,000. Okay. So that is my profit and all of my costs that are not food related. Okay. Letter B says we want to do what? Divide by the number of guests. So in this case is 2,000 guests. Okay. Divide by 2,000 guests. What's 8 divided by 2? $4. So our contribution margin is $4. So we just add that to each one of our costs, right? So this $4 is our non-food cost and our profit, and this is our food cost. That way we have all of our categories covered. Non-food and profit, food cost. So what's 4 plus 250? Good, 650. And then the next one, 7. The next one, 1925. And 415. Okay. Do we see a difference between these? All of our food costs are the same as this previous example. Okay. Which two items are the most significantly different? So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which numbers are the most significantly different? 3 and 4, right? We went from $38 and $1.50 to $19 and $4.15, right? Number 4 is probably a beverage, okay? Cost me 15 cents to make an iced tea. Am I going to get away with selling it for $4.15? Probably not, unless it's the most amazing iced tea in the whole wide world, right? But probably not. I mean, right now, today, you go on a menu in a restaurant, it's between $2.50 and $3 for an iced tea, okay? But can we get more than $1.50 for it? Yeah. So the reason why I'm showing you these 4 different methods is because you doesn't mean you have to pick one method and do that to every single menu item. You can pick and choose what you can do, okay? Just because the math says that you should sell it for $1.50 doesn't mean you have to. You can always sell it for more as long as those guests have that price value relationship. $15.25 is our cost. This is probably going to be more like an entree, right? I would rather get double the cost, right? $15.25 compared to $38.13, that's what? $18 or 15, 30 plus 8, $23 difference. In this case, we're only going to get $4 difference, right? If it's an entree and the guests are willing to pay $38 for that entree, I would want to sell it for that because I'm going to get more profit than just $4, okay? Now, in this case right here, as long as we had 2,000 guests, we would meet that profit goal because we're taking into account that $4, okay? Questions, comments, concerns about factor, contribution, or food cost percentage? Okay, the fourth style, or the fourth way is what we call our Q factor, okay? Q factor, oops, Q factor. All right, so our Q factor, we're going to use this 2 different ways in this class. This is the first one. The second one we're going to see on the project, okay? So our Q factor, which I believe is the answer to number 7, if you flip your page over. I don't know what I do. Oh, it's right here. Number 6. Number 6 is the Q factor, refers to the total of all similar complementary items in a plate. Okay. So things like the bread basket that Brian mentioned a little bit earlier, those chips and salsa, right? The cost of those chips and salsa, you might go ahead and just, let's say it cost you $1 for those chips and salsa. Just add $1 to all your menu items. Or like if you think a table of 4, add 25 cents to every menu item. And then that way, as people are ordering them, it'll cover the cost of the chips and salsa. That way they think it's free, but it's built in somewhere else. Okay. The Q factor in this case, these are all the complementary items that are added onto this barbecue plate. Okay. So if we add up the cost of each one of these, bread, starch, vegetables, dinner salad, the dressing for the dinner salad, the butter, and the condiments, it comes to $3.43. Okay. So then we can take the cost of our brisket, the barbecue sauce, plus that $3.43. Then if we have a sausage plate, all we're going to substitute is the cost of the sausage. And everything else, this $3.43 is the same. Okay. How many of you have been to a place where you get to order something and you have your choice of side? Right? Who can give me an example of that? Anybody? Okay, so you get that the entree portion. It automatically comes with fries, but you can ask for mashed potatoes. Good. What else? Any other examples? Make me hungry. I haven't eaten dinner yet. Maria. Okay. Yeah. Luby's, if you order the entree, right, and it comes with 2 sides. Now, if you're going to do this Q factor method, do you think you're going to put your cheapest side in there or your most expensive side? I'd put your most expensive side, right? That way, okay, let me rephrase that. If the menu says it comes with French fries, then put the cost of the French fries on there, right? But if it's the choice of 2 sides, what if everyone chooses mac and cheese? If you put in the cost of French fries and everyone's choosing mac and cheese, every single time they order that, you're losing a little bit of money. But if you put in the cost of your most expensive side, like mac and cheese, every time someone orders fries or mashed potatoes, you're making a little bit more. See how that works out? Okay, so it's strategic when you're using this Q factor. Now, if you think, okay, I put the mac and cheese in there and then it makes it too expensive and nobody wants to buy it at all, then yeah, maybe reevaluate and see maybe not your most expensive side, but maybe like the second or third most expensive. That way, every time someone orders a cheaper side, it makes up for the times that people are going to order the more expensive side. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So Q factor, we're basically just taking the cost, and it's also easy because you just add it one time, and then again, it stays consistent. Kind of like similar to Q factor, but like if you eat salad, right? How many of y'all like extra salad dressing? Okay. So if you order extra salad dressing and they don't charge you for it, this salad dressing, the cost of that 2 ounces, or 1 ounce in this case, no, 2 ounces, the cost of this 2 ounces for that salad dressing is built into the price. But if you order extra, then that does what? It increases the cost, but the price stays the same. So as a manager, if you start seeing in your computer system, there's a whole lot of extra ranch dressings on salads, you could do one of 2 things. You can start charging for that extra side of ranch dressing, or maybe increase the standard recipe to 3 ounces. You increase the standard recipe, the cost to 3 ounces, but the standard serving size is still 2 ounces. See what's happening? Again, if my cost is based on 3 ounces, but my standard portion is 2 ounces, every time somebody does not ask for extra salad dressing, I'm going to make a little bit extra money for that 1 extra ounce of salad dressing that I'm charging for, right? But every time someone asks for extra dressing, it's covered by the fact that people are not asking for extra dressing. Does that make sense, or did I confuse y'all? Is it just late? Just charge them more, yeah? Right? Or, I mean, oh my gosh, like McDonald's, they got like super stingy with their sauces for their chicken nuggets. I mean, now to the point where it's like on the menu, if you get a 6-piece, you get 1. If you get a 10-piece, you get 2. If you get a 20-piece, it's 4. And you better not ask for any more, otherwise it'll charge you. I know, you have to ask. All right, so that is how we kind of cost out our menu items, or how we cost them all out. There's a whole science and psychology to menu pricing, okay? Let me do something real quick before we move on. Let's go with the whiteboard. There we go. Nope, you guys aren't seeing that. Okay, so we have a menu. Where's my drawing? There we go. Let's go with that. No. Okay, 2-page menu. You open it up, okay? There's a whole psychology that most of the people are going to look at this area first. So that's why when you open up a menu, a lot of the more popular stuff is up here, right? Or drinks are on the left-hand side, food entree, appetizers maybe are up on the right, to encourage you to start looking at the appetizers, okay? If you have a trifold menu, this is prime real estate right there in the center, okay? There's also psychology about how we price items. We typically will go to like 99s, right? 10.99 is how much? Essentially $11. But if you're like me, I look at this first number, I'm like, oh, that's only 10 bucks. It's 1 penny away from 11, but I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, so if I'm looking at the difference between an entree and I'm on a budget that is $14 or $10.99, I'm gonna go with the $10.99 one. I'm only saving $3, but in my mind, I think I'm saving $4 because I'm just looking at that first number, right? And so sometimes too, like going to like 25, 10.25, 10.50, those even increments are also things that people look at. When you see items that are really oddly priced, anybody ever see a menu item that is like $7.27, right? If you see an item that says 7.27, it's kind of a weird number, right? Why not just make it 7.25? Why not make it 7.50, 7.30, whatever, right? 7.27. When I was doing event planning, I would actually work it to where it was an odd number. Because whenever I was doing event planning, if I presented a number and it was $7.27 per person, right? That seems like it was a really accurate number. But if I said 7.50 per person, sometimes the client's like, oh, you just rounded up to 7.50 to make it an even number, you know? And so sometimes it's weird. It's good to have weird numbers. There's like a whole psychology behind all of it. That's really fascinating. Next time you go out to eat, think about when you open your menu, what is the first place that your eye goes to? Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about menu engineering at the next little bit. How many of you ever seen like a star, or at Chili's, it's like the little chili emblem? What does that usually mean if it's right next to a menu item? It's a popular item, right? Is it really popular? It's what they want you to think is popular. Okay. I'm not trying to be cynical, and I'm not gonna like judge all the people that are all restaurants that are out there, but we're gonna talk about in just a moment how we analyze the menu and how we can adjust it to draw people's attention to different items to make them more popular. Okay. And why we might want to do that. All right, so number 7. In that blank space, I'd like you to draw this image with the arrows, the squares, the names, everything in there. And I'd also like you to add 2 components. Let me use a different color that will stand out. An H for high and low, high and low. Right? Give you a couple minutes to draw this in that blank space. All right, so how we utilize this tool, okay? We're going to take 2 different categories, okay, or 2 different characteristics, and then we'll be able to put them into one of 4 categories based on this chart here, okay? Popularity basically means how popular an item is, okay? How popular an item is, if it's really popular or if it has low popularity, okay? Profitability on the bottom, that is also our contribution margin, okay? Number 8 on your paper. Number 8 is the contribution margin, is the difference between the selling price and the recipe cost, okay? So our contribution margin is the difference between what we sell it for minus our recipe cost, okay? So if something, sorry, I made a mistake. I hope you didn't use pen. This should be flipped. Should have low on the bottom and high on the other side. Sorry, low and high. Okay. If something is highly popular, okay, and it's highly profitable, it makes us a lot of money, we draw our lines and they connect at the star. Okay. So we put our finger on the high popularity, the high contribution margin, we bring them together, it's the star. If we have low popularity and it still makes us money, bring our fingers together, and it is our puzzle, okay? If we have low popularity, low profitability, bring up together, it is our dog, okay? And then the last one, we have high popularity, low profitability, that's our plow horse, okay? So we're gonna go over how we calculate our popularity and how we calculate our profitability, our contribution margin, okay? And then once we do that, we'll be able to analyze and put our menu items into these various categories, okay? So when we are figuring out our popularity, okay, let's go to the second page that you have. So each of you should have 2 pages. One is the notes page. The other one's going to have a bunch of charts on it, okay? Let's look at the first one, the front page where it says popularity index, okay? Popularity index, let me pull it up on the screen so we can all follow along. All right. So our steps to calculate our popularity index. The first one We want to add all the items sold. Okay. And that equals the total items sold. Okay. Zoom in a little bit more. So add all the items sold, and that equals the total items sold. The second step is to divide each item by the total sold. Okay. We are essentially finding the popularity percentage. Okay. The popularity percentage. So let's use this first example. Number one, if we sold 64 steak entrees, what is the popularity index if we sold 320 entrees total? Okay, so I've already added all of the totals for you. Let me get my writing tools. 320 is our total items sold. So 320 goes in the bottom and 64 goes on top. So 64 divided by 320 is 0.2. Okay, so that means it is 20%. That means that my steaks, of all the entrees that I sold this day, steaks were 20% of it. Okay. The next one, we have 75 entrees total. 25 of them were chicken. What is 25 divided by 75? Okay, so that's the 33%, 0.3%, right? Because it's 3.33 repeating. So 33.3%. It's really easy for me. Like I said, in business, we like percentages. It's easier for me to see, yes, 25 is how many chicken I sold, but it's easier for me to see it as 33.3% because I know that's 1/3 of our entrees were sold. Okay. So let's go down a little bit to the first table, the first chart. Okay. What is the total of our entrees served? Go ahead and add those all up. Check your neighbor to make sure you both got the same answer. If you don't have a neighbor, double check the screen up front. Should be 500. Okay. Should be 500. Now, what we want to do, step number 2, is you want to divide each one of these by 500. Okay. We divide each one by 500. I've done the first 4 for you. You're welcome. Go ahead and do the last 4. that. Dang it. Sorry. I mean, at least you see all the drawings and stuff. Man, I'm gonna be so excited when I don't have to cough anymore and I don't have to mute. Sorry, for those of you watching the video, I apologize. Let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna go over one of the quizzes. All right. So the quiz that I want to go over is the popularity benchmark and the average contribution margin quiz. Okay. So on this quiz, questions 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're all the same information. Okay. But question 1 is asking about the appetizer category only. Question 2 is asking about the salad category only. Okay. The numbers will stay the same up here. So let's work on number 1 together. We're finding this is going to give you that practice to find that popularity benchmark. Okay. So remember, we're going to divide 100 by the number of menu items. So number 1 is the appetizer category. How many appetizers do we have? 5. So we do 100 divided by 5, and that equals 20. Okay. So 100 divided by 5 is 20. The second step, we're going to multiply by the percentage that's given. It's 75%. Okay, we all see that up here on the screen. I know it's kind of small, but we see that up here on the screen, 75%. So what's 20 times 0.75? It is 15. So I just write 15 right here. Okay. Question number 2. Now it's asking about our salad category. So what's 100 divided by 6? 16.7. Okay, and now we multiply by the same 75%. See, the 75% stays the same. So questions 1, 2, 3, and 4 will all have 75%, but each question is asking for a different section of the menu. So what is 16.7 times 0.75? 12.5, okay? So I would just put in 12.5 right here, okay? So questions 1, 2, 3, and 4, again, this one we're asking about the entrees and the desserts. The 75% stays the same. We all see how that works? Okay. Then when we go to questions 5, 6, 7, 8, five, 6, 7, and 8, we are going to do, some of the categories may still have the same numbers, but again, we're gonna start back at the appetizer, and this time it's 80%. Okay, then we have salad, and it's still 80%. So 5, 6, 7, and 8 are gonna be the same with 80%. Again, this is giving you practice multiple times to do that 100 divided by the menu items times the percentage that's given, okay? What do you think about 9, 10, and 11, and 12? It's gonna be the same, okay? Same categories, appetizer, salad, entree, dessert. But in this case, we're doing 95%, okay? So again, you're gonna have 12 problems to practice over and over again that process. Then 13, 14, 15, 16, this is gonna ask for your average contribution margin. So you first, oops, dang it, let's go back. Okay, you first have to subtract to find your contribution margins. And then in this case, we're going to divide by 4 after you add them all up. okay? We're gonna add them all up and divide by 4. And that's how we find our average contribution margin. We all see how that works? Anybody not see how that works? We're gonna subtract to get our contribution margins, and we add them all up. Let me clean that up a little bit. Different color. Then you're gonna add them all up, and whatever this answer is right here, then you divide that by 4, because we have 4 items, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So you're gonna find that average contribution margin, and then divide that by, after you add them up, divide by 4. And that's questions 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns? All right. Let's take a 4-minute break. At 8:10, we'll come back and do an in-class activity to really solidify these concepts.